this. Captain Kent was a tall, lean American with a singularly impassive face which looked as though it had been carved out of wood. "Pleased to meet you, gentlemen," he murmured as he shook hands jerkily. Perrault threw an extra log on the fire and brought forward more easy chairs. I brought out glasses and the whiskey and soda. The captain took a deep draught and expressed appreciation. "Legislation in your country is still sound," he observed. "And now to business," said Japp. "Monsieur Perrault here made a certain request to me. He was interested in some concern that went by the name of the Big Four, and he asked me to let him know at any time if I came across a mention of it in my official line of business. I didn't take much stock in the matter, but I remembered what he said, and when the captain here came over with rather a curious story, I said at once, 'We'll go round to Monsieur Perrault's.'" Perrault looked across at Captain Kent, and the American took up the tale. "You may remember reading, M. Perrault, that a number of torpedo boats and destroyers were sunk by being dashed upon the rocks off the American coast. It was just after the Japanese earthquake, and the explanation given was that the disaster was the result of a tidal wave. Now, a short time ago, a roundup was made of certain crooks and gunmen, and with them were captured some papers which put an entirely new face upon the matter. They appeared to refer to some organization called the Big Four, and gave an incomplete description of some powerful wireless days. You laugh, monsieur, said Perrault, shaking a finger at him. You reflect not, you use not the little grey cells of the brain. Who are these men who send a portion of your navy to destruction simply as a trial of their power? For that was all it was, monsieur, a test of this new force of magnetical attraction which they hold. Go on with you, monsieur, said Japp good-humoredly. I've read of supercriminals many a time, but I've never come across them. Well, you've heard Captain Kent's story. Anything further I can do for you? Yes, my good friend, you can give me the address of Mrs. Halliday, and also a few words of introduction to her, if you will be so kind. Thus it was that the following day saw us bound for Chetwynd Lodge, near the village of Chobham in Surrey. Mrs. Halliday received us at once, a tall, fair woman, nervous and eager in manner. With her was her little girl, a beautiful child of 5. Perrault explained the purpose of our visit. Oh, Monsieur Perrault, I am so glad, so thankful. I have heard of you, of course. You will not be like these Scotland Yard people who will not listen or try to understand. And the French police are just as bad. Worse, I think. They are all convinced that my husband has gone out with some other woman. But he wasn't like that. All he thought of in life was his work. Half our quarrels came from that. He cared for it more than he did for me. Englishmen, they are like that, said Perrault soothingly. And if it's not work, it is the games, the sport. All those things they take au grand sérieux. Now, madame, recount to me exactly in detail and as methodically as you can the exact circumstances of your husband's disappearance. My husband went to Paris on Thursday, the 20th of July. He was to meet and visit various people there connected with his work, amongst them Madame Olivier. Perrault nodded at the mention of the famous Frenchwoman chemist, who had eclipsed even Madame Curie in the brilliance of her achievements. She had been decorated by the French government and was one of the most prominent personalities of the day. He arrived there in the evening and went at once to the Hotel Castiglione in the Rue de Castiglione. On the following morning, he had an appointment with Professor Bourguignon, which he kept. His manner was normal and pleasant. The two men had a most interesting conversation, and it was arranged that he should witness some experiments in the professor's laboratory on the following day. He lunched alone at the Café Royal, went for a walk in the Bois, and then visited Madame Olivier at her house at Passy. There also his manner was perfectly normal. He left about 6. Where he dined is not known, probably alone at some restaurant. He returned to the hotel about 11 o'clock and went straight up to his room after inquiring if any letters had come for him. On the following morning he walked out of the hotel and has not been seen again. At what time did he leave the hotel? At the hour when he would normally leave it to keep his appointment at Professor Bourguignon's laboratory. We do not know. He was not remarked leaving the hotel, but no petit déjeuner was served him, which seems to indicate that he went out early. Or he might, in fact, have gone out again after he came in the night before. I do not think so. His bed had been slept in, and the night porter would have remembered anyone going out at that hour.